Hello, and welcome to another edition of An Interview in History. This interview takes place on April 10th, 1865, and I'm very excited to be with our guest today, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Abraham Lincoln is an American lawyer, politician, and statesman. President Lincoln led the United States through the American Civil War, defending the nation as a constitutional union, defeating the insurgent Confederacy, abolishing slavery, expanding the power of the federal government, and modernizing the U.S. economy. Among American heroes, President Lincoln continues to have a unique appeal for his fellow countrymen and also for people of other lands. This charm derives from his remarkable life story, the rise from humble origins, and from his distinctively human and humane personality, as well as from his historical role as savior of the Union and emancipator of enslaved people. Hello, Mr. President. It's such an honor to meet you and talk with you today. Do you mind if I ask you questions about your private and professional life?
Ask away, although it's better to remain silent and to be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt.
Thank you. I've heard you have a quick wit, and clearly there is no doubt about that. So, where were you born, Mr. President?
I was born in a backwoods cabin in Kentucky.
Can you talk a little bit about your parents and if you have any brothers or sisters?
My father, Thomas Lincoln, was a descendant of a weaver's apprentice who had migrated from England to Massachusetts in 1637, though he was much less prosperous than some of his Lincoln forebears. My mother, Nancy Lincoln, is widely assumed to be the daughter of Lucy Hanks. Thomas and Nancy married on June 12, 1806, in Washington County, and moved to Elizabethtown, Kentucky. I had two siblings, Sarah and Thomas, who died as an infant.
What was one thing you learned from your father?
My father taught me to work, but not to love it. I never did like to work, and I don't deny it. I'd rather read, tell stories, crack jokes, talk and laugh, anything but work.
What did you gain from your mother?
All that I am or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother.
I see. Can you give me a sense of your formal education?
I was largely self-educated. My formal schooling was from itinerant teachers. It included 2 short stints in Kentucky, where I learned to read but not write at age 7, and in Indiana I went to school sporadically due to farm chores, for a total of fewer than 12 months in aggregate by the age of 15. I was always an avid reader, and have retained a lifelong interest in learning.
So, with that in mind, what is your philosophy regarding schools?
But upon the subject of education, not presuming to dictate any plan or system respecting it, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged in.
Would you encourage the young to get into politics?
Politics, as a trade, finds most and leaves nearly all dishonest. So I would encourage anyone to think long and hard before going into politics.
It seems like a lonely position to be president. I would imagine that hearing criticism of the work you're doing must be rather tough.
If I cared to listen to every criticism, let alone act on them, then this shop may as well be closed for all other businesses. I've learned to do my best, and if the result is good, then I do not care for any criticism. But if the result is not good, then even the praise of 10 angels would not make a difference. When I left Springfield to become president, I asked the people to pray for me. I was not a Christian. When I buried my son, the severest trial of my life, I was not a Christian. But when I went to Gettysburg and saw the graves of thousands of our soldiers, I then and there consecrated myself to Christ.
Tell me a little bit about your marriage to Mary Todd Lincoln.
My wife, Mary, is as handsome as when she was a girl, and I fell in love with her. And what is more, I've never fallen out. When she decided to cast her lot with mine, it is my intention to do all in my power to make her happy and contented. And there is nothing I can imagine that would make me more unhappy than to fail in the effort. Tell me about your children. Mary and I had 4 sons: Robert, Edward, William, and Thomas. Robert Todd is our eldest. Our second son was Edward Lincoln. Eddie, as we called him, was a kind and warm-hearted child. Unfortunately, Eddie's health was always poor, and he died a month before he turned 4 years old. Then there's William, we call Willie, our third son and our most intelligent. Our fourth son is Thomas, which we called Tad. That's quite a family. I'm very sorry to hear about the death of Edward. That had to be difficult. Oh, my poor boy. He was too good for this earth. God has called him home, and I know that he is much better off in heaven. But then we loved him so. It's hard. It's hard to have him die. I can only imagine. Mr. President, I'd like to switch gears a bit and talk about the presidency, and more specifically, the Civil War. I know you've spoken about liberty quite often. Can you go into more detail? The world has never had a good definition of the word liberty, and the American people just now are much in want of one. We all declare for liberty, but in using the same word, we do not all mean the same thing. What constitutes the bulwark of our own liberty and independence? It is not our frowning battlements, our bristling seacoasts, our army and our navy. Our reliance is in the love of liberty which God has planted in us. Our defense is in the spirit which prizes liberty as the heritage of all men, in all lands, everywhere. Destroy this spirit, and you have planted the seeds of despotism at your own door. You've lost the genius of your own independence, and become the fit subjects for the first cunning tyrant who rises among you. So then, do you expect that we could be taken over by outside forces? Where shall we expect the approach of danger? Shall some transatlantic military giant step the earth and crush us in a blow? Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined could not by force take a drink from the Ohio River or make a track on the Blue Ridge in the trial of 1,000 years. No. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we will live forever or die by suicide. America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. How do you feel about the Civil War? There's nothing good in war, except its ending. Well then, do you feel we will come through this united again? I do not doubt that our country will finally come through safe and undivided. But do not misunderstand me. I do not rely on the patriotism of our people, the bravery and devotion of the boys in blue, the loyalty and skill of our generals, but the God of our fathers, who raised up this country to be the refuge and asylum of the oppressed and downtrodden of all nations, will not let it perish now. I may not live to see it. I do not expect to see it. But God will bring us through safe. We need to discard all this quibbling about this man and the other man, this race and that race, and the other race being inferior, and therefore they must be placed in an inferior position. Let us discard all these things and unite as one people throughout this land, until we shall once more stand up declaring that all men are created equal. I love that. So then, where do you see this country failing? Nations do not die from invasion. They die from internal rottenness. I see in the near future a crisis approaching that unnerves me and causes me to tremble for the safety of my country. Corporations have been enthroned, and an era of corruption in high places will follow, and the money power of the country will endeavor to prolong its reign by working upon the prejudices of people until all wealth is aggregated in a few hands and the republic is destroyed. Freedom is the last best hope of earth. So you truly believe that all men are created equal, as you have said before? I have never had a feeling politically that did not spring from the Declaration of Independence, that all should have an equal chance. This is the sentiment embodied in the Declaration of Independence. I would rather be assassinated on this spot than surrender it. Our popular government has often been called an experiment. 2 points in it our people have already settled: the successful establishing and successful administering of it. One still remains: its successful maintenance against a formidable internal attempt to overthrow it. Then following laws are also a very important part of a successful government and country. Let reverence for the laws be breathed by every American mother. To the lisping babe that prattles on her lap, let it be taught in schools, in seminaries, and in colleges. Let it be written in textbooks, spelling books, and in almanacs. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed in legislative halls, and enforced in courts of justice. Do you have any rules for living? Rules for living. Don't worry. Eat 3 square meals a day. Say your prayers. Be courteous to your creditors. Keep your digestion good. Steer clear of irritability. Exercise. Go slow and go easy. Maybe there are other things that your special case requires to make you happy. But, my friend, these, I reckon, will give you a good life. I understand you had a dream recently that disturbed you. Can you tell us about it? I went to bed a few nights ago, and I soon began to dream. I heard subdued sobs, as if a number of people were weeping. I left my bed and wandered downstairs. There I met a sickening surprise. Before me was a platform on which rested a corpse wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people gazing mournfully upon the corpse, whose face was covered, others weeping pitifully. "Who's dead in the White House?" I demanded of one of the soldiers. "The President," was his answer. "He was killed by an assassin." Wow, that's extremely upsetting, and I pray it's not a premonition of the future. Do you feel that you've been a success so far in your presidency? I am a success today because I had a friend who believed in me, and I didn't have the heart to let him down. I have simply tried to do what seemed best each day as each day came. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep on doing so until the end. I'm sorry, but it's time for me to go. But I would, however, rather stay. I completely understand, Mr. President. But let me leave you with this. I have a dream, and my dream is of a place and a time where America will once again be seen as the last best hope of Earth. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come talk with us. It's been a real honor and pleasure. May I shake the hand of who I feel is one of the greatest presidents of our time. Thank you. Abraham Lincoln passed away April 15th, 1865, by an assassin's bullet. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you can join us next week as we interview Seth Kinman, a prospector, furniture maker, hunter, and an all-around interesting character. Until next week, take care.